Hey film buffs, welcome back to Film Feature 43. I wanted to do something a little bit different, a different type of video to supplement the reviews and theories that I already do on this channel. So I decided what better way than to add knowledge into it. So we're going to do 43-ish facts about movies, whether they be classics or new ones that you guys want to see me do facts about. So I want your input. Let me know what movies you want me to do 43 facts about. But today, we're going to start with the greatest movie of all time, that being Die Hard. I figure what better movie to start this series than one that'll never be beat, at least in my heart. So, let's get into it. So as I mentioned in my previous Die Hard video, the movie Die Hard was based on a book that was a sequel to another book called The Detective that was made into a movie starring Frank Sinatra.
Roderick Thorpe's #1 bestseller, a literary guild selection. Now, an adult powerhouse on the screen.
The book that Die Hard was based on was called Nothing Lasts Forever, which was actually demanded by Frankie Sands to be written so it could be made into a movie starring himself. It took 11 years for that movie to be made, and by that time, Old Blue Eyes was literally Old Blue Eyes and turned down the role because he was too old. I guess they could have set it in a nursing home, but it would have lost a little bit of his excitement. In the book, John McClane's name is Joe Leland, and he's there to see his daughter, who actually dies in the end. But the first screenwriter who was brought on, named Jeb Stewart, who was actually a professional tennis player, got the idea to age down John McClane and make it his wife when he had a fight with his own wife and left angrily from the house and had a near-death experience on the highway. After the screenplay was written, they started searching for a director, and they landed on John McTiernan, who actually turned down the role to begin with because the script said terrorists in it. He demanded that they change it to robbers because robbers is more funny. I don't know if Kevin McAllister would agree with that.
First thing I'm going to do is bite off every one of these little fingers, one at a time.
But eventually it was changed to robbers, and John McTiernan came on. So they got the director, they need a star, and Clint Eastwood at one time actually owned the rights to Nothing Lasts Forever. It was be made into a film in the 1980s that he was going to star in, but he turned down this film because he didn't understand the humor. I don't understand that because look at this face. This is the face of humor. You think he would get it. But he didn't. He passed on the role. Other people who were asked to do this film were Sylvester Stallone, Richard Gere, Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Caan, Al Pacino, and Burt Reynolds, who pretty much all passed because they thought John was too wimpy. Finally, they landed on thespian singer, commercial actor, and TV star.
Look here, seagulls, golden wine cooler, seagulls, golden wine cooler.
Who was hot off of 2 box office bombs, and they offered him $5 million, making him one of, if not the most highest paid actors in Hollywood. Of course, we all know that that actor was Bruce Willis.
Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs.
But what you might not know is Bruce was probably one of the most German people on the film. Walter Bruce Willis was born in West Germany in 1955. Reginald Val Johnson, Carl Winslow himself, was actually about to give up acting, but was egged on by his mother to go to this audition, where he passed Wesley Snipes in the hallway coming out of his audition for Al Pal. He gave his audition, was obviously selected.
Welcome to the party, pal!
And to give thanks and gratitude to his mother, bought her a house with the money he made from Die Hard. So you have your heroes, now you need your villain robbers. And what better person to play a German robber than the very English Alan Rickman, who was a stage actor, and this was his first movie. To go along with his inexperience of acting on the big screen, he actually didn't know how to hold a gun.
Know how to use a handgun, Bill?
I spent a weekend at a combat ranch. You know that game with the guns that shoot red paint? Probably seems kind of stupid to you.
He held it too limply, so he had to be taught how to hold a gun while they were filming the movie. They had a script, they had a cast, they had a director. Now they needed a place to film the movie. So they decided to use their own building, Fox Plaza. As you can tell, Fox Plaza and Fox kind of go hand in hand, that sat in for the Nakatomi Plaza, but it was actually occupied on several floors by lawyers and other businessmen. They were allowed to use the unfinished part of the building to film Die Hard. But don't worry, Fox actually charged themselves rent to film this movie in their unoccupied floors of their building. Before filming, the director wanted more humor added to the script, and Jeb Stewart could not do that. He just wasn't getting the humor that McTiernan wanted, so he was fired and replaced with 24 Hours writer Steven D'Souza. So they had a finished script. They pretty much scrapped it in favor of this new script, but when they started filming, they only had 25 pages at the beginning of production. But even though they had this new script, we can all be thankful that the iconic line,
"Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker,"
was in it from the very first draft of the script. It was talked about by Jeb and Bruce Willis when they first met to talk about the movie, and was in the scripts ever since. The cast had a goal to make this movie look as real as possible, so in the scene where Argyle punches Leo in the face, Trebek actually took that punch, and as you can see, Argyle's actor shaking his hand. It's because he actually punched him and hurt his hand. That wasn't the only real punch to happen. In the famous scene where Hawley punches Richard Thornburg, that is actually real as well. And unlike the John McClane fire hose scene that was inspired by the 1923 film Safety Last, they did not use a stuntman to drop Hans Gruber off of the Nakatomi Plaza. They actually dropped actor Alan Rickman 40 feet to a crash pad on the floor, but instead of letting him go on 3, 2, 1, go, they let him go on 3, 2, 1, dropped him early to get a genuine expression of fear from his face. They made sure that this was Rickman's last scene in case he got so mad that he quit the film. Alan did not get hurt during this scene, but he did get hurt when he jumped down to meet John McClane for the first time. He actually hurt his leg, so in the rest of that scene, as you can tell, it's kind of close up, he was standing on one leg the whole time to not put pressure on his injury. Speaking of Gruber and McClane's first meeting, the American accent that Hans uses,
Please, God, no, you're one of them, aren't you? You're one of them. No, don't kill me, please, no, please. No.
actually came about around the craft service table when they were joking, asking Rickman if he could do an American accent. He said, well, I can do a California accent, and that's the accent that he used.
It's pretty tricky with that accent. You ought to be on TV with that accent.
The writers were really trying to figure out how to make Hans and John meet, so they used this opportunity to make that happen. That wasn't the only unfortunate fall to take place during production. The stuntman who was standing in for Bruce Willis in the elevator scene where John McClane falls down through the elevator actually fell. They just added hands catching the edge of a vent to save the scene. Speaking of elevators, there's a scene in every Die Hard movie in the franchise that takes place prominently in an elevator. Not only that, but also in Die Hard on a Bus, aka Speed. The reason for that is the cinematographer of Die Hard, John DeBont, was actually trapped in an elevator during the production of Die Hard, and that gave him the idea for the opening scene of Speed, which he later directed. One more injury on set. Bruce Willis actually suffered permanent hearing loss in his left ear when he's shooting at the robber from underneath the table. There was a sheet of plexiglass to stop the casings from coming in his face, which kind of made the shots of the even louder than normal guns even louder, causing permanent and partial hearing loss in his left ear.
Thanks for the advice.
Besides from injuries, the rest of the production was smooth sailing, except for the fact that they weren't allowed to fire a prop gun until after 5 p.m. because the lawyers in the building made complaints. Also, the neighbors around Fox Plaza really complained about the lights and explosions. So, the city gave them 2 hours to film everything they needed for the helicopter scenes. Unfortunately, the police said, oh, what you're doing is too dangerous, so they actually only had 30 minutes of shooting before they were shut down by the city police. So the rest of the helicopter scenes during production were done by the next best thing, models. So where the roof explodes and the helicopter crashes down the side of the building, that was all done by model work. By the time it was all said and done, production used 17 undershirts for John McClane, one of which Bruce Willis donated to the Smithsonian in 2007. So now it's time to market this near-perfect movie. Posters went out, trailers went out, and when audiences in cinemas saw the trailers, they laughed. Specifically at Bruce Willis as this action hero.
So I go to the neighborhood theater, I guess it was in Century City, and when the trailer started, the audience booed Bruce. And I go, well, these are these West Side jerks, But then like before the weekend was over, I heard from everybody involved in the movie that everywhere, New York, LA, everywhere, people were booing and laughing at Bruce Willis's appearance in the trailer.
Audiences' reactions were so negative towards the trailers that they actually took Bruce Willis off the posters for the film. They just put the Nakatomi Plaza on there and took his face completely off the posters. But when it came out, you could say that it did relatively well. I mean, you could say that it was credited along with Big and Young Guns for saving 20th Century Fox Studios, and it was nominated for 4 Academy Awards in pretty much sound and effects, but it lost 3 of the 4 to Roger Rabbit, and losing the 4th one to another film, so it didn't win any Academy Awards, but it was at least nominated. You gotta look at Roger Rabbit, though. It's a pretty big spectacle and effects, so I could kind of see where the Academy was going, but Die Hard is also a marvel of special effects, so...
Ooga booga!
2 more quick facts. We see Notre Dame in Southern California playing on Christmas Eve in the film. The 2 teams have played each other every year since 1926, except for 2020 because of Schmovid, but they've never played on Christmas Eve against each other. And speaking of the Fighting Irish, the film, whenever it's released in Germany, the bad guys are not German, they're actually Irish robbers. So, I hope you like these facts, I hope you found them entertaining. Let me know what movie you want me to cover next, and I'll see you in the next one.